Great. I can build on that, I think, a little bit to sort of address the question that you asked about, sort of the focus of the global panel on providing guidance to governments, or influencing, I guess is what we call influencing actions, both in policy and in practice. And you've heard some of the evidence that we're beginning, I think, to kind of pull together. Many of you in this room have participated in other kinds of working groups that have been convened by the panel, again, to kind of draw that experience out. But I think it's still early days for me to say, oh yeah, this is exactly what we're going to do on trade policies. I think I was listening to, who was it? Kim Anderson talk in the previous session about policies and sort of responses to the price volatility that followed the price spikes in 2008. And I think many of us in the room would agree that, in fact, it was those price spikes that drew attention to the question of nutrition security and drew attention to the question of resilience, because very poor, very vulnerable populations in 2008 were actually very negatively affected by changes in that price market. What I thought was interesting, though, was that Kim Anderson mentioned a number of government policy changes, a number of potential changes with regard to trade agreements, with regard to sort of prohibitions and non-tariff barriers to trade, but never was the role of the private trading sector in providing any kind of resilience or dampening price volatility, just along the way that Bart just mentioned with regard to the potato market, for example, in India. By storing the potatoes, by ensuring an off-season supply, instead of price volatility, am I right, Bart? Instead of price volatility going like this, in fact, consumers in India, post the innovation of the cold storage warehouses, were in fact able to find that the volatility of the prices and the reliability of supply throughout the year was enhanced. So it's those kinds of issues that I think we need to explore both more deeply and perhaps more innovatively as we go forward. I am, however, going to check, and I should have warned you about this, Jeff, our technical advisor here, on the issue of how we relate to the high-level task force, which, are you talking about the high-level panel of experts that is advising FAO, in which case we have Per Pinstrup Andersen here, a member of that? Or are you referring to a different task force that I'm unfamiliar with? You're probably meaning the high-level panel of experts. In which case, let me suggest, ma'am, that Per Pinstrup Andersen, who is a member of that high-level panel and in fact chairing it, would be better placed to answer the question than I. So we have talked a little bit, Per and I, about sort of how the global panel and the HLPE can interact, but again, it's early days. But do you want to make a comment, Per?
Certainly. I actually raised my hand. I was going to make an offer that I hope the global panel wouldn't refuse, namely to make everything we do available to you at no charge whatsoever. We generate and synthesize evidence on a number of issues related to food security. We have 6 reports completed, one of which, in fact, is price volatility and food security. Very detailed analysis of precisely that topic. Everything is available to you, as I said, at no cost. We have a new report coming out in 3 weeks on fisheries and agriculture and how those sectors can be improved for the sake of improved food security and nutrition. In July, we have another report coming out on wastes and losses in the food system and how that influences food security and nutrition. We have a set of recommendations that come with each of those reports. We share your objectives. We are trying to assist governments in making evidence-based decisions related to food security, so we are in this business together. And if there's any way we can support you as you proceed, we are there to help. Now that I have the mic, can I also ask an unfair question of Bart? But I realize that resilience probably was not part of the objective of what you were working on. But would you be willing to speculate on whether the resilience of rice farmers and rice consumers benefited or lost from the market transition that you just explained to us?
Do you want to answer that one right straight away? That's a very direct question, Bart.
One thing that you see, what you see happening in these value chains, I think over time, and you actually see that also happening in Africa. There's always the presumption that these value chains are very inefficient, there are lots of layers in the middle, and so there have been quite some changes happening over time. Okay, so these value chains are becoming actually pretty efficient. We have done recently a study in Ethiopia, looking at the teff value chain, really looking at, what is the share that the producer gets in the final retail price. And there's a belief that you have these layers of people in the middle. You have the belief that a lot of these traders are running with these profits. So we did this really big surveys, representative surveys at the producer level, at the trader level, at the retail level, and try to figure out what is actually the part of the final retail price that's going to the farmer. Now we find that 80% of the final retail price is going to the farmer. So what does that tell you about, if changes are happening, it's both are going to be affected immediately, right? So you have like big changes happening in these world markets or something like that. This will have an immediate effect on both ends of this value chain, the consumers as well as the producers. They're very, very intimately connected in a way, very closely connected.
Is it not true, though, Bart, that your studies in Asia showed that sort of on average 60 to 70% of the retail price actually was in the post-farm gate segments of the value chain?
43% in the case of rice. Now, rice is obviously a little bit different crop than, because they have to go through this milling process, and so there is some processing required. But still, what we also found is that also so there's a lot of complaints, for example, about, transport costs being very high in this region. But then you start looking at how important are these transport costs actually in the final retail price. And so on average for these 4 countries in Asia, it was about 6% of the final retail price that was going to transport costs. So a little bit more. I mean, a lot of these numbers actually, one often doesn't know. There are a lot of statements are being made, but if you actually start looking very hard at this data, you get some misrepresentation actually.
Okay, a couple more questions. The gentleman there in the white shirt, in the black jacket, and the lady right in front of you.
Is there some solid analysis showing that the integrations of the markets, let's say in rice, the benefit of those integration is really going to the producers or to the consumer, or it is just taken up by the supermarkets? Right? We do not know who is really benefiting from the integrations of the markets. So is there, I'm not aware of the analysis of those analyses, but is there, I'm asking, if there and such analysis available which says that those improvement in efficiency of the market, I don't know in what terms, but whether the benefit goes to the farmers or to the consumers or both or none.
Can I just turn that question around to you before we do that? From what you heard from Chicken Choice, from what you heard from our presentation on Chicken Choice, do you think the consumers are benefiting more, or do you think that the chicken producers are benefiting more? Or, in fact, are they both benefiting from the work of Chicken Choice? Think about that. Yeah, I'm asking you. No, I'll let you sit on that one. Back there, the gentleman in the black jacket.
Okay, I'm coming from Zambia. The issue is that the government really doesn't really worry much on the nutritious, more expensive foods. They are concerned with the staples. And the staples tend to have a direct impact on the economy. So I'm just wondering, from the presentation Bonnie made, that the issues of the staple foods in terms of who consumes that, because it has got a direct impact on the inflation. So what the governments tend to do is to subsidize the staples, okay, to bring the price lower. As a consequence, people find the staples to be cheaper. And this has got a direct effect on food diversification. The government, on the other hand, will go out to its population, okay, and talk about food diversification. But the other side, the government knows that if they don't subsidize the staples, there will be problems, civil strife in the country. It has happened before in Zambia in the 80s. Right now I'm speaking, there's been a lot of talk because the government decided to remove a certain percentage of subsidy and the price of the staple has gone up. People are complaining. So my question, probably could go to the global panel or even to Gen, is how best can you assist the governments to start to understand the need for nutrition diversity, and how best can they handle such situations? Because we can talk about building resilience for food and nutrition security, but they still have that problem because these are the guys who voted them into power, and that is their constituency. And they really need to ensure that the next election they go through. So, in as much as we talk about this, maybe there's need for assistance on how best they can formulate policies that would address such a situation. Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. I think that's a question that many observers would echo. I'm going to have one more question here, then we're going to do a round of answers, and then if we have time, we'll do one more round of questions. So make your question very brief and to the point, please.
Okay, my name's Natalie Dutt from Concern Worldwide. I'd like to thank the panelists for the presentations. It was really interesting to see these small and medium-sized entrepreneurs being supported to actually engage in the value chain in a meaningful way, but particularly by providing these products for very poor consumers, like the offcuts of chicken and the small little containers of milk. Now, we all know actually that those poor people, they do consume, but they also engage in the value chain. They might be very smallholder farmers, they might be agricultural labourers. So my question was, are there initiatives or policies that would actually support those people as consumers, as we've seen, but also when they engage in the value chain? I was thinking of things like minimal wages in the agricultural sector or other things, and I really wanted to know what your views were on that.